Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Open. Welcome once again. I am your host, Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com, ArmchairOscars.com, and my new blog, Overthinking Oscar, at Wordpress.com. And as always, joining me across the country is the gold standard and co-host, the film critic and film historian for TalkMovieMe.com, Mr. Doug Heller. How the heck are you today, sir?
You like me. You really, really like me.
Why are you going down that road? Why do you have to go there? This was supposed to be dignified. Well, we're doing a special show today. We're talking about the Academy Awards and asking a very pointed question, an ancient question: does Oscar matter? And
Short answer, yes.
I have a lot to say about this, but I'm going to let you answer the question. Does Oscar matter?
Short answer, yes. I get a little annoyed with critics and film people who actively say, "Oh, I don't care about the Oscars or any kind of awards or anything like that. It doesn't matter," but it does. These are the same people that release an annual best of list. Sometimes it's longer than 10, sometimes it's 10. That's the same thing. It's the Oscars have lost some credibility over the years here and there. But overall, I think that I think it is important for the movies because it's film people recognizing the best of the year, and it's important to the way that some movies are made. Now, I don't personally believe that there's such a thing as Oscar bait. I know that would get me into a lot of fights. I'm sure that there are some people who are like, well, I'll take this and maybe I'll get my shot finally. But for the most part, people make a movie because they believe in the movie, and if it ends up being really, really good, or their performance ends up being really, really good, then they might get rewarded for it. Or if it turns out that they're not very good in it, and it looks like something that they should have been good in, then people will say, "Oh, it's that they did that to try to win their Oscar." It's like,
Yeah, I hate the term Oscar bait mostly because the term Oscar bait seems to be pointed at anything that is serious, important, and anything that is not tentpole seems to be Oscar bait.
yeah,
I hate
and
that.
any comedian who makes a dramatic turn.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Oscar bait. It's Oscar bait.
Now there are films that I've seen that are clearly Oscar bait, and that they're usually can be lobbed on films that are terrible. Like
Majestic.
Like The Butler.
Whoa.
Because if you've noticed, I don't know if
Yeah.
you've noticed this, but over the last couple of years, I'm going to try not to date this episode, but I don't know if you've noticed that over the last couple of years, Oprah Winfrey has been dead set on winning an Oscar.
Well, they should have given one to her for The Color Purple in the first place.
Right.
But
But I mean, a lot of the films that she's been producing lately, like The Butler, and it's clearly she would like to win an Oscar. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But you got to make better films.
Right.
It's
Or stop producing Lee Daniels movies.
Yeah,
That's
stop producing Lee Daniels movies. But a lot of these films, I look forward. You and I look forward to the end of the year
oh yeah.
because that's when you get the good, challenging films.
Mm-hmm.
My short answer to this is yes, Oscar does matter. The Oscars are important because movies are important.
Right.
I saw someone the other day tell me, when I posted this question on Facebook the other day, someone said to me, it's not a fair award that you give if you give it to yourself.
I saw that on there. Yeah, but you're not giving it to yourself. Your
Well,
peers are giving it to you.
the film industry gives their Oscars, just
Right.
like the music industry gives itself the Grammy,
Right.
or the television industry gives itself the Emmy. It's not self congratulations. It's just an industry award.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has an industry award.
Right.
I mean, car salesmen have an industry award.
Right, yeah, exactly. Or, best insurance salesman of the quarter or whatever. Yeah, it's all
Right. And I think
because if they don't recognize themselves, who's going to recognize them?
right, right.
Because,
Competition is healthy.
right. And we, in our line, there's critic circles. You and I are in the Online Film Critics Society, but there's also, the New York film critics, the Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, all these different film critics organizations that give out their, awards too. And as the season rolls on, they start to get more important because they start to be kind of the predictors in what's probably going to come out ahead at the Oscars, but not always.
But by the time you get to the end of it, by the time you get to the end of the season, and you've seen all the other awards, and you kind of get to the Oscars, and you kind of already know.
Oh
My
yeah,
mother, when I used to watch the Oscars with my mother was like, "How do you know all this?" I'm like, "Because I've been following the progress."
exactly. Like I'll sit there and I'll be able to pick the whole thing, with a few exceptions, because every once in a while they do throw a curveball, and the technical awards I usually don't pick very well. Um, but they'll throw a curveball for like supporting actress or something, like Marcia Gay Harden instead of what's her name for Goldie Hawn's daughter.
Oh,
Kate
for almost.
Hudson for Kate Hudson and for Almost Famous. Everybody had Kate Hudson on their list.
Yeah,
Everybody. And then Marcia
including
Gay
yours
Harden,
truly.
yeah. And then Marcia Gay Harden wins for Pollock. It's like, I get it, but really?
Yeah.
Like, she
Well,
was
and
excellent.
also it's this thing where it, it, you know how to predict. I've been watching the Oscars regularly, and I've never missed it since 1991. And
I haven't missed it since 98 or 99.
I started watching the Oscars the year that Dances with Wolves won, and I
Mm.
haven't. And so far to date, I haven't missed it yet. And I study Oscar history because it's a fascinating history.
Right.
I'm passionate about this. My website, my life's work is dedicated to the Academy Awards,
Mm-hmm.
Armchair Oscars. And I always like to tell my party guests, my obsession has a first name. It's OSDAR. And I go into this because I say it's fascinating. But if you watch year after year, you can pretty much predict what's going to win. You
Yeah.
listen to the pundits. You go with tradition. You know that the editing award is almost invariably going to be the film that's going to win Best Picture.
Right.
You know that the special effects award is probably going to be the movie that made the most money.
Yeah.
You kind of clue into these little things,
Mm-hmm.
and I know it sounds silly, but it's just an award show, but it's the award show.
Right.
This is the most important. This is the Super Bowl of award shows,
Well, sure. This
and it's
is
and it's an American tradition.
yeah. Back when do you remember when Elton John won for The Lion King?
Mhm.
He won his
Yeah.
Oscar. He's holding it, and like backstage or something, he goes, "Yeah, Grammys are nice, but they're kind of like balsa wood. This is real gold." Like,
Mhm.
like this is it, no matter what line of entertainment you're in, you want an Oscar.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
Grammys are
yeah,
fine, Emmys are okay, but I want an Oscar.
yeah. You know what? It's like, I was just about to say, it's important. Does Oscar matter? Yes, because it's important because competition is important
Hmm.
because it keeps people alert.
Right,
It makes it invariably forces them to want to, or encourages them rather, to
right.
want to do better work.
Hmm.
And also, who wouldn't want that honor?
Right.
Who wouldn't? What kid doesn't sit in front of the mirror with that hairbrush and give their Oscar speech?
Right, 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 right,
You
right,
know,
right.
even though they dismiss it with, well, it's just a nomination. It's like, well, it's just an honor to be nominated. Well, yeah, it does matter to the person who's standing up there with it in their hand. And everybody dreams about that because the Oscar has such a prestige for being the top award.
Yeah.
It's really hard to give out an award after the Academy Awards because you know once you reach the top, you go through the SAG Awards, you go through the Golden Globes, you go through all this other stuff.
Hmm.
The Oscars are kind of the top of the hill at the roller coaster,
Right.
and once you've passed that pinnacle, it's hard to go up another hill again.
Yeah, that's why like when by the time I think it's the MTV Movie Awards happen some like 3 months like sometime in the middle of the year or something. It's like, why is this happening now? Who cares
Yeah.
about this now? For movies that were from the last year, it's like it's June. We're halfway through the new year now. We don't care.
Well, that's one of the reasons. I mean, they moved it. It used to be in late March, early
Yeah,
April,
yeah, yeah.
and I think around 2001, 2001, they started putting it in February,
On
which I
Sunday,
don't mind. On Sunday,
because it used to be on
which I don't
Monday
mind.
nights.
Yeah, it used to be on Monday night, and which I don't mind.
No.
I'd like it to be among the other awards. Um, I think that the Oscars have unfortunately become a little diluted by those other awards
Yeah, because
because
there's always now there's something else. SAG is now on TV, and the Golden Globes, and you get a lot of stuff now on television. The ones that I would really rather watch instead of like SAG, which is a good award show to watch, but I'd rather be able to see like the Writers Guild or the Directors Guild because I want to see their speeches.
yeah, my thing is a show like um, the Academy Awards is diluted because of what comes before it.
Hmm.
How many times can you listen to a speech by Brie Larson about the room,
Right, right, right.
make,
Because it
and still get
all
excited,
right.
about her
It all
speeches
it
about
all ends up being kind of the same speech if they're nominated for the Independent Spirit Award and the Golden Globe and the SAG and they win all of them. It's like, okay,
The only thing that bothers me about the SAG Award is they're giving the same award to the same person, generally, the same person, by the same body, because the same people
right,
that vote for the SAG are the ones that vote for the Oscar.
right,
So
because
it's,
they vote in category.
yeah,
It's
and
like, yeah, I
and oh, I've got an opinion about the Golden Globes. I watch the Golden Globes, but I do not take them seriously at all.
I watch the Golden Globes because I want to see who gets drunk and announce and does their announcements. Because do you remember years ago when Liz Taylor was
Oh God,
drunk off her keister trying to trying to present an award?
yeah, it was Best Picture, no less. I mean, the most important award of the evening.
It
She was already
was
crocked.
she was she wasn't half in the bag. She was all the way in the bag. She'd eaten through the bottom and crawled into a bottle. Like
Oh God.
she was in one side and out the other and could not couldn't do it. Just could not.
I tune
So,
into the Golden Globes only to see who gets the Cecil B. DeMille Award
mm-hmm.
because I like those moments,
Yeah.
those lifetime moments. When you get the package and then the person comes out, you know, gives their speech and what have you. And it's not the end of their career, but it's a high point,
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
and it's something that the Academy Awards don't do anymore.
Right. They have their
They
governor's
don't.
ball and they do that separately.
Yeah, they do that separately. Like a couple of years ago, they gave awards to Jackie Chan and Hal Needham for their stunt work,
Right.
and they didn't allow them to do speeches on the show because
Mm-hmm.
they don't do that anymore.
Right.
And I think we've lost a lot of moments because of that, because they're trying to streamline the show.
Right. I think that's
And
true. I wouldn't mind if they aired the governor's ball.
yeah, yeah, because you never see that.
Right.
And
They
I
show
just want to
little
hear the
clips of
speech.
their speeches when they announce them, but they don't you don't get to hear the whole thing. And I appreciate streamlining the show. I appreciate them finally having once and for all gotten rid of the interpretive dance sequence
Yeah,
because that was a dead albatross around their neck for 15 years, 20 years or more. It was
oh God, I hate this thing where where they try to make the Oscars young and hip.
I
The Academy Awards telecast, let me tell you something, is a big lumbering dinosaur.
mhm.
And as long as you give out, there are 24 awards to be given out, and as long as you give out all 24 awards on the show, you're going to have the same result.
Mhm.
It's going to be 4 hours long.
Right, and they're always
There,
like,
you know,
"Oh, it's we're running a little long." It's like, you know what?
it is run long.
You're not. You're actually not because I expect you to run 4 hours.
Yeah,
So if you run
yeah,
shorter than that, and I've seen some of them that are like 3 hours, I'm
mhm,
stunned when they stay within their
yeah.
allotted time frame. When they're like stay at 8 to 11, I'm stunned when they actually end on time.
I'm stunned when they're done by midnight.
Yeah,
I really am.
I mean, I don't understand why. And then people go, "Oh, it's just so long. Why does it have to be so long?" It's like to what you said. They're giving out 24 awards and then they have to talk about it. And then you have to break that up a little bit more for the people who are in the audience
Yeah,
in the auditorium because they're just sitting there. They don't get the
yeah.
commercial breaks.
They just get a pee break, and that's
Right,
it.
right, right. And then a seat filler comes in and fills their seat and then
Yeah, I'll never forget that year that the seat filler got the wrong seat
right.
and was sitting where Minnie Mouse was going to be. She got the Minnie Mouse. It looks like she's sitting on somebody's lap. But no, people who don't follow the Oscars always tell me they'd rather watch the Golden Globes because it's looser and it's more of a party atmosphere. I don't like the Golden Globes. I don't like the Hollywood Foreign Press
Well,
because
no,
what
that's
it is,
it's a bunch of old white guys giving out awards and misclassifying things.
no, what it is. Here's what it is. Here's what it is. The Hollywood Foreign Press, their membership is made up of people who just write something like for their hometown paper.
Mhm.
You know, who live in wherever they're living in, Turkey or Czechoslovakia or wherever they're living, and they're working as waiters or they're working as
Mhm. Mhm.
whatever, and they send in these pieces. They do not let in major critics.
Right.
So, and this thing has gotten so much clout, and it's like I don't understand all of this
Well, the funny
because
thing,
I'm like, who are these people?
it doesn't have clout. That's the thing. It thinks that it does, and people who are kind of on the outside of the industry will say, "Oh, well, the Golden Globes is usually a predictor for Best Picture." It's never a predictor.
It never is.
And the press has given it more clout over the years because they have stopped paying attention to how all of this works.
Right?
Um, they're like, well, this could be a good indication of what's going to happen. It's like, no, no,
No, it's really not.
no.
They're just picking what everybody else is picking.
Right, and and they also uh, are prone to weird petty jokes,
They are.
like nominating The Tourist as a comedy. It was just a
Yeah,
bad movie.
and The Martian.
Yeah, that should have been
Remember
a
that?
drama.
Yeah.
There's talk now that they're putting Get Out in the category of comedy or musical.
I can't see it as a musical. I guess I could sort of see it as an extremely dark comedy.
I guess. I mean, it's a thriller, if not a horror movie. There's funny parts in it, but really, I mean, they're just looking at the fact that Jordan Peele directed it, and they're like, "Oh, hey," they might not have even seen it,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
they certainly don't understand it because it's very American.
And the other thing is, you know who the Academy is.
Yeah.
You know this. You know there are 6,000 members of the Academy, and you know who they are. They're people who work in the industry.
Hmm.
The people who vote for the Golden Globes, that membership is not in the industry.
Right.
That's a block of people who, like I say, write little reviews for their hometown paper. These are not major critics in this organization. So
Hmm.
it's always been a little spurious to me. It's like I don't understand it. I don't really get it.
Right.
It doesn't have any more clout than some online organization or something. I mean, and you got all those organizations online. We belong to one of them,
Hmm.
where you don't necessarily have to be working in the industry to 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 be a member,
Hmm.
um, but you're in there. And the Golden Globes work like that. That always bugs me.
Hmm.
But I've always been partial to the Academy Awards because, really, for me, it's because of its history, and
Right.
because it's amazing to me that after uh, more than 90 years, the Academy, and you're going to laugh at this statement, the Academy has generally remained scandal free from within. Now, they've had scandals. They just recently had one.
Hmm.
But most of their scandals are stuff that are brought in from the outside, like, say, Oscar So White,
Yes.
or but that was brought upon the Academy
Right.
by their choices
Hmm.
for several years. Um, but for the most part, they've remained scandal free. They have not had an inside problem.
Right.
The only time I can recall recently that they've had an inside problem, you have to go back to the Hoop Dream scandal.
Mm.
And even that wasn't within the industry really, because it was a bunch of the people who were voting for that. The documentarians don't have a voting branch. It's a
Right.
bunch of retired volunteers.
Right.
So I mean, see, even that it's never an inside thing. But but when there is a scandal like Hoop Dreams or like Oscar So White, there's always this thing where the Academy knows how to deal with it,
Right.
because they're very good about responding to things like this.
Hmm.
When the Hoop Dream scandal thing happened, they promised and they did put in an investigation into and changes into the voting process.
Hmm.
Now, whether or not they held is another matter. When it came to Oscar So White, they did respond,
Hmm.
because the president, Cheryl Boone Isaacs, did almost immediately put out that there were going to be changes in the industry, or there were going to be changes within the organization
Hmm.
to make it more inclusive.
Right.
And they did.
Hmm.
And I think the biggest response from the Academy to Oscar So White was that the following year, the Best Picture was Moonlight.
Right.
And
And
Viola Davis won for Fences, and Mahershala Ali won for Moonlight.
right.
So I think that was there.
But when I look at it like this, I'm not going to be convinced that yeah, that was the response for 2 years of having no black actors or actresses or black centered movies be nominated or be serious contenders. Um, but what happens this year? Now
That's true.
we're dropping this episode the day before the nomination, so we have no idea what's been nominated for the 2017 films for the 2018 Oscars. Um, I know you said you didn't want to date this episode, but now we kind of have to. Uh, so going over like looking at a lot of the buzz and everything, I don't see a lot of people of color getting buzz, except Get Out and maybe Jordan Peele. But I would hesitate to say that they would give Best Picture to Get Out when
I wait See, because um, you kind of have to. Here's the thing: where you are with the Oscar predictions in say mid-December are completely going to change by the time you get
Oh,
to late January
absolutely, absolutely,
because it changes
absolutely.
so much.
Yeah, yeah, it
Because
does.
people see different films get buzz, and it starts trending, and then you get all of this stuff
They
that
start
comes
their
down.
campaigns in earnest.
Right, right, and you get all of that stuff. So it's completely different, possibly on January 1st, than it is on January 23rd.
Hmm.
So it's a little bit different. Now, as for the Oscars so white, here's the question I had. Now there was a legitimate argument that for
Hmm.
2 years in a row, 99, 95, 99% of the nominees for everything were
Hmm.
white.
Hmm.
But my argument was, did they forget about Forrest Whitaker, Halle Berry, Jamie Foxx, Lupita Nyong'o? Did they forget about Cuba Gooding Jr.?
Here's
In recent years, they had made in Denzel, they
uh
had
huh.
made a massive effort,
Hmm.
and it had been a great decade of seeing people of color win acting awards.
Hmm.
And I
Uh,
thought that nobody ever mentioned that, and that
well,
bothered me a little bit.
I mean, they did. I think that's what I think. Those wins are what spurred the Oscar so white because for an entire decade there wasn't as much of a problem. There were a lot of men winning the best actor, a lot of black men winning the best actor. Regrettably, Halle Berry is still the only black woman that ever won
Right,
best lead actress. But there was a lot. There were nominations all over the place, and then
right.
suddenly for 2 years, in all four acting categories, nothing. After all of these years of genuine inclusion and really and those performances being recognized rightfully in many cases, um, then to all of a sudden be like, yep, nope. I mean,
I
there
get
were
that.
there were some, like, what was it, 2 years ago during the Oscars so white uh, uh, hashtag, um, Chris Rock hosted the Oscars.
Which was really strange.
Yes,
It was really strange,
and
and
he
they were
said
beating him down and
they
saying he should
were,
back off.
they
Yeah,
were, but he addressed it on stage. And he said, everybody's talking about Oscars so white, how the last 2 years there have been no black nominees. What about the 65 years before
yeah.
when there was like Sidney Poitier, and that was it,
Hattie McDaniel,
and
and that's
Hattie
it.
McDaniel, and it's like he has a valid point, but on the other hand, those years were regressions, and it was sad to see the regression, and they didn't let Twitter and the general public didn't let them get away with the regression. But I'm interested in seeing what goes on this year because there hasn't been a lot of buzz, like I said, except around Jordan Peele and Get Out. Even the film Mudbound got
Yeah,
a lot
you
generated
don't
right
hear a
when it
lot
came
about
out.
Mudbound.
Huh?
You don't hear a lot about Mudbound.
No, it generated a lot when it first came out, when it was first released, and then it just dropped. But it's apparently magnificent. I haven't gotten to see it yet, but I've got the screener sitting there, and it's been on Netflix for a month and a half or more, and I'll get to it. Um,
Well, and there's also this that they a couple of years ago they opened the awards to 10 nominees for Best Picture category, which I agree
reopened, reopened.
reopened
So
because it was
remember, it
up
was
until
it
the
was
time of the
10 early in the war. I think 40 or 41. They cut it down to like five.
yeah they cut it down to 5,
But
And then
originally
a
it had
couple of
been up
years
to
ago,
10.
and a couple of years ago, they cut it. That they opened it up so that it was not locked into 10, but it was flexible.
Hmm. No
So
more
that you
than
could get
10, but it could be
yeah,
less.
so you could get more films in there. But still, here's the problem: there are 250 major releases every year,
Hmm.
and out of the 250 major releases, 240 have to go.
Right.
So you're dealing with threading the eye of a needle. You have to get out there. You have to be campaigning, campaigning, campaigning. If you want to win the Oscar, you have to be pushing it.
Oh
You
yeah, it's
really have to
all
be, you know,
the studio has to
whether
put a lot of money behind it, and it's
no
that's
matter who's
where
in the film, you have to get
right,
out there and push it.
right. And I think that that's where the critic circles are important because they tend not to be the focus of the campaigns,
Mhm.
and they tend to focus more on the work
Yeah,
more than the campaign. And but it's really in many cases it's like running for office, is that like if you go out there and you're not and you don't look like you want it, they're not going to give it to you whether
no,
your work demands it or not,
right.
which I think is why it took Scorsese so long to win an Oscar.
I'll never forget. I think it was Jon Stewart that year that
When
what
Three
was that
Six
song
Mafia won
that
for Hustle and Flow,
yeah
yeah.
he said 3-6 Mafia 1,
One, Martin
Scorsese
Scorsese,
0.
0. Let's just remember that.
It was a terrible song. I mean, it was just like it was a terrible song, and
Great
Martin
movie.
Scorsese's still sitting
Great
there in the one
movie.
hit.
Hustle and Flow was a
It was a
great
good
picture.
movie. It was just the song was just kind of terrible. But yeah, they
It's hard out there for a pimp.
yeah, yeah.
It worked
That
for
was
the
supposed to be
movie.
the youth.
It worked for the
Yeah,
movie, but I don't know that it maybe had should have won. Now I do agree when they gave it to Eminem for "Lose Yourself" for Eight
that was
Mile.
good.
That was a fantastic song. Um, but they try to court and try to show, oh hey, no, we're with the times, but how many there's a few standout performances for people of color that are not um, servants of some kind,
Yeah,
and usually they're kind of the ones that'll win, but not the ones that are most nominated.
mm,
Like Forrest Whitaker for General Idi Amin Dada.
yeah.
That was a hell of a performance.
It
Uh,
was
Jamie Foxx as
Ray
Ray
Charles.
Charles. He was Ray Charles. Like he was a physical embodiment. Um, Halle Berry in Monsters Ball was just
Yeah.
incredible and tragic and just and Viola
Viola
Davis in
Davis in
Fences,
anything.
in anything. That I am still angry about that. That should not have been her first Oscar. That should have been her fourth Oscar.
Yeah, I was about to say she should have won for Doubt.
She should have won for Doubt, and even
Yeah,
though I didn't really like it, she should have won for The Help because her
yeah.
performance was magnificent. Um, she should have won for uh, any of the other movies she was nominated for and lost. It's like I don't understand how you cannot give her the Oscar when she's nominated. I don't get it.
Well, the year of the Help, that was Meryl Streep's third, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Iron
that was
Lady.
yeah, the Iron Lady, which was not a very good movie. It's a
No,
good performance in a bad movie.
right.
Um,
And she's given much better performances in much better movies before and after that.
but I think they really gave it to her for her best performance because Fences, in my opinion, Fences was her best performance.
Yeah,
Um,
but
but
there's no way of knowing that. The best actors seldom get rewarded for the ones that they should be rewarded for. Denzel
Pacino.
Washington. Um, yeah, Pacino. Uh,
Wah!
yeah, Pacino should have won at least two, and not for the Scent of the Woman.
Pacino should have at least 4 Oscars by this
I
point. I mean,
know.
oh,
And
God.
De Niro's only got two. I mean,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't understand. They're like, oh, this he's the greatest actor of his generation. We don't really acknowledge him when it comes to like, but we love him. We love him. And Streep, when you look at like everybody's, oh, she's the most nominated actress in Oscar history, and she is.
hmm 20.
20 nominations, 3 wins.
hmm
That is not a very good statistic.
No, it's not.
I mean, you'd think that with all those nominations, she would have more than 3, and they
She
would
should at
not.
least be tied
And
with Katharine Hepburn. Katharine
right, and
Hepburn has
she
4.
for lead actress.
Yeah.
Meryl Streep has 2 leads and a supporting.
Mhm.
That's why Jack Nicholson didn't count when he had, because he has 3. He has 2 leads and a supporting, but Daniel Day-Lewis has the most male actor Oscars because he's got 3 leads.
Daniel Day-Lewis. Let me talk about Daniel Day-Lewis for a second. This man does not make a movie every year.
This man
But when he
barely
comes
makes
out
it.
and
Oh my
makes a movie,
god.
he wins an Oscar for it.
He does. Because he's so
What is
good.
it?
And
What
this,
is this, the witchcraft that he has?
I don't
That
know.
all of a sudden, when he comes out, he is just magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes back into hiding.
Yeah. And now he said that this final film that he's doing for Paul Thomas Anderson, The Phantom Thread, is going to be his last film. He's
He
retiring
said
as
that about
a
Lincoln.
film actor. What?
I think he said that about Lincoln, too.
He might have.
But you know what? It's, um, you
He's
can
going to go
complain
back to
about the Academy.
cobbling or something.
You can complain about the Academy Awards all day long, but the complaints in truth are really valid
Yeah.
because the whole thing is not fair.
No.
Because it's not fair to sit actors up there and make them compete with one another. It's not fair. But at the same time, and that's the biggest argument people have with me is it's not fair. And my biggest thing is when you do that, it encourages competition.
Right. And whoever said life was fair?
And whoever said life is fair?
I
But
mean,
my thing is, if you are nominated for an Academy Award, you're in the books.
mm-hmm.
You are now in the books. You
See,
are now part of Oscar's little scrapbook
right.
forever.
Right. And people seem to forget the fact because there are so many people who have been nominated multiple times and won multiple times that when you really scale the amount of people who are in the industry versus the amount of people who have actually been nominated for this award,
Right.
it's like it's not even 5%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very small group of people, and then you get the multiple nominees who, are constantly getting nominated, like Meryl Streep, like Nicholson was for a long time, or Denzel Washington, or any of these people that just keep getting nominated because of their high quality work. Steven Spielberg, uh, and may never win, or they might win one, but that's one person a bunch of years
Yeah.
taking away from a spot for a new person to get
Right.
nominated. So
Right.
it limits the field even more. And
And even in 90 years, I mean, there are 3,000 awards, statuettes that have been awarded.
right, and
That have
that's a
been given
small
out.
number, really.
That's a small number
I
when you
think it's
consider the amount of nominees.
I think it's really funny. Way back when it first started, um, I want to say, was it Janet Gaynor won the first best actress,
Yeah.
and I think she won another one later, or it might have been Louise Rayner who won two.
It was Louise Reiner who won two back to back.
Right, and she she didn't understand its importance because it was still kind of new, even in the mid 30s. She said she was using one as a doorstop.
Mhm.
She didn't understand. She didn't care. She said, if I would have known what it was going to grow into, I wouldn't have uh, uh,
Treated it that way.
mistreated. I would have taken better care of it because
Janet
it
Gaynor
got
said
dinged
was
up.
asked. Janet Gaynor was at the very first Academy Award, and she was asked, what was it like? And she said, well, it didn't really have a tradition. It was
Right,
just a dinner, and the next
they
day
announced it before.
yeah, the next day it took them 15 minutes to hand out all the awards.
Right,
She said the next day it was like a when your kid wins a sporting event or something at
hmm
school, and you go to the banquet dinner.
right,
You just pick up the trophy. You go to Pizza Hut. They're just handing out trophies. That's what it was like. She
right,
said it didn't have any tradition, so the next day we just forgot about it,
right.
and it really didn't gain prominence, until later. Probably didn't gain its massive prominence until television.
That's
And
true.
everybody wanted one. Everybody, it gained every year, and everybody wanted one, but it wasn't a big thing. And then television came along,
Well,
and for years
they did
it was
broadcast it on the radio, but yeah, for
yeah,
television they got to see the stars on their
and that was
in their houses, and that was something that was very rare because
yeah,
movie stars didn't do television back then, and if they did, they were washed up movie stars.
yeah, you'll get shot on something.
Right.
But they would. It was the only way you could see these big stars,
Mhm.
and it was up until probably the media age, in the late as the end of the millennium approached, and nowadays you can see Brad Pitt every 5 minutes.
Right.
Nowadays you can see, Lady Gaga. Wait 5 minutes and you'll see Lady Gaga,
Mhm.
and that has diluted the importance of the Academy Awards a little bit.
Right.
But I always say this: the massive big reason why I think the Academy Awards are so important and why I think Oscar matters is because not only does it encourage good work, but it promotes good work.
Mhm. Yeah.
All year long, now I said the 250 major releases, all year long, we get all of these movies that are tentpole, that are just out there for big entertainment.
Right.
You know, you can take a movie, um, you can advertise Star Wars with a minimal effort. You can,
I saw a thing on I think it was Facebook Live. Ryan Johnson was there. They were and so was Daisy. I know
Daisy Ridley.
Daisy Ridley might have been there. Uh, uh, um, John Boyega and Gwendolyn Christie, and they're passing around the stormtrooper helmet answering questions, and Mark Hamill started off going, "So we're here to promote a movie that doesn't need to be promoted."
Yeah,
And John Boyega said something like, they asked like how this has affected their careers, and he said, if I get to talk like Mark in interviews when I get older, then it's all worth it,
it's all worth it.
because Hamill just doesn't care.
Your 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 reputation, your ability to be able to connect with fans is cemented the moment you sign the contract.
Yeah.
Once you get in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
you can do conventions for the rest of your career.
Right.
But what I was talking about is, a movie like Star Wars. It's like Mark Hamill said, we're here to promote a movie that doesn't need to be promoted.
Right.
There are some movies like that. You
Mm-hmm.
can do that with Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that with Jurassic Park. The reason the Oscars are so important is because they promote movies you've never heard of
Right.
and are
Or
tougher to sell,
that are like on the fringes or whatever, like Moonlight last
like
year,
Moonlight,
and or
Slumdog Millionaire, or
yeah.
The Birdman.
Right.
It's
Which
it's it's hard to sell those in a 30-second ad.
we're gonna have to do an episode on Birdman.
Yeah, I love Birdman.
I I've only seen it once. I enjoyed it, but I think we differ on how great it is. But I need to watch it again. But
Well, I was so happy with the Academy Awards because it allowed people to hear of that.
mm-hmm.
There are movies you just don't hear of if you don't have the Academy Award.
Right. The King's Speech,
The King's Speech,
which was
yeah,
an
I mean,
excellent movie.
the artist or something
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
you would never have heard of these, but they're in front of a billion people.
See, the artist might never have been made. See, going back to the Oscar bait, I don't think that filmmakers, directors, writers, actors
Mm-hmm.
necessarily go in to win awards.
No,
Studios do.
studios do,
So
producers do.
they will greenlight a movie because they think that they're going to win an Oscar. It's like Gene Hackman in Get Shorty when he was saying that this that screenplay was going to be his driving Miss Daisy. Like
Yeah,
they they're the ones that are active because it means more money for them because people are going to go see
yeah,
this movie and justify this smaller movie getting released and stuff. So,
and it
you
puts
know,
them on the map.
yeah, it does. It does. Like A24 with Moonlight's win, they're a major contender now.
Yeah,
And they've got Lady Bird out right now, which is Greta Gerwig's directorial debut and the best reviewed movie on Rotten Tomatoes ever, with 100% and 185 or 190 reviews counted.
yeah,
I mean, that's impressive. It beat Toy Story, and that had 160 or
yeah.
120 some odd reviews, and it was 100%. This is trying to double that, and it's still at 100%. That means that's a pretty darn good movie for critics.
Yeah, I mean, you get down to um, the movies they push,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them are really good movies.
Yeah.
They push movies that they push a little movie like Moonlight that will have gotten lost,
Right.
and I think people would,
In the
I honestly
general
think people
tide
would have
of La La
forgotten about.
Land.
I think people would have forgotten about Moonlight if it hadn't been for that mistake
Oh yeah.
on the Oscar stage.
Mm-hmm.
It would have fallen like Spotlight did.
Yeah.
Because people don't remember Spotlight.
I know. I keep
But
trying to think of it too. Like Spotlight. Like I'll go through them and try to remember them, and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, Spotlight," because Spotlight was a great movie, and I think that might have actually been my vote for number one my first year in the OFCS. But I don't. I
the
barely
Online
remember
Film
the
Critics
movie.
Society.
Yeah.
That's the thing is that when you get to a movie like that, it's really good.
Yeah.
The problem is it tends to be momentary
Right.
because when you get down to the end, and this may play into where the Oscar selection comes in. We go through an award season. We're members of the Online Film Critics Society, full disclosure, and we get screeners every year
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the year for our own awards.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so do actors, writers, directors, producers. Everybody in the Academy does the same thing. They get screeners. They go to screenings,
Mm-hmm.
most of them, and or some of them,
Mm-hmm.
and
They're supposed to.
there are about 300 films. It's almost like you've got this volley of films to get through.
Right. And if you're uh, like you and I, who don't often get to go to a free screening, they have more in Pittsburgh than I'm sure they do in Birmingham. But I still, this year, we have to rely on the money that we have in our pockets to be able to go to the movies. And if that changes in some way, we don't get to go out to the movies as much.
Yeah,
And therefore we've seen less. And then that makes this time of year for us more hectic because we're trying to catch up with the screeners of movies that haven't come out yet that are going to come out after our awards, and the studios want us to consider them. Like
our
for us,
awards are in mid-December.
right? So we've gotten
There's a lot of
things
stuff
like
we don't get to see.
right. There's a lot of stuff. That comes out that they don't send us screeners for, like the Phantom Thread. It's not coming out until Christmas, and I don't think that studio is going to give us a screener. So
Yeah,
Daniel Day-Lewis is going to miss out on our prestigious award
yeah.
because we can't judge it because we can't. They're not letting us see it.
It's not going to be on our ballot. It's
Right.
not that we're not going to vote for it. It's just not going to be on our ballot because we didn't get a screener for it.
Right.
We didn't get a chance to vote for Moonlight last year
Yeah.
because we didn't get a screener for it. We didn't get to see it.
We didn't get a screener for it. I did end up seeing it in the theater before nominations, so I did get to vote for it. But this year I'm still struggling to try to figure out when I'm going to get to see Lady Bird, and our
Yeah.
nominations are due by the end of next week. I
Oh, I
am
gotta
happy.
tell you.
I am happy that I'll get to see The Last Jedi before our nominations, though.
Can I tell you a story about Moonlight?
Yeah.
I went to see Moonlight last year. I went to see it in January,
Hmm.
and I go in and I know nothing about it. Okay, I don't even understand the poster. So I go in to see it. It is a crowded theater, and it's one of those. If
Yeah.
you go to the multiplex, one of the back theaters,
Hmm. Hmm.
one of the smaller ones. You go
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
theater, and I'm sitting there, and it's like there are a bunch of people in there. I was encouraged because there were a
Hmm.
bunch of people in there. Afterwards, as we're walking out, the manager walks toward the theater, to help clean up.
Hmm.
There's an elderly couple who walk up to the manager and start grouching at him and complaining. We didn't know what this movie was going to be. We didn't know it was about a homosexual. We didn't know it was about all of this. And I'm thinking to myself, you sat all the way through the movie.
Right.
Where was your complaint? Why did you not jump up
Yeah.
when the kid was sitting on a beach and his friend was jerking him off? Why did you sit through the entire movie to complain about this?
Well, it's like that. It's like that joke in Annie Hall. It's like they give the food here is terrible and in such small portions.
People fascinate me. I
it's
mean, the human animal
it's
just fascinates
remarkable.
me sometimes.
Yeah, I mean,
Complain about it once it's over. You know, reminds me of those old ministers. And I was born in a small town in Arkansas, and those ministers would go and see a movie to make sure it was okay for the public, and they'd
hmm
see it 3 or 4 times
yeah.
just to
Well,
be
hey,
sure.
at least they were doing their due diligence instead of picketing a movie they hadn't seen because they'd heard
This
something
is
about it.
true. This is true. That's very true. But it was just funny. It's like, I sat through every disgusting frame of this film twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but coming back to it, it's like you didn't ever heard of Moonlight if it hadn't been for the Academy Awards, probably
Right.
for the
Or
promotion that they put
right.
out there. You never
And
heard of
even going
Slumdog
back,
Millionaires.
right, or Monsters Ball,
Yeah, yeah,
or
Monster Ball,
you
yeah,
know, because that was a
and
tiny
good
little
movie.
picture.
It was. It was a very tiny, and it was very. That's the other thing. It's very squirrely. You never know. A movie can get a lot of promotion,
Hmm.
but come away completely empty-handed.
Yeah.
I'll never forget in '93. I was absolutely convinced. I would have bet money that Much Ado About Nothing would have gotten at least 8 Academy Award nominations because they promoted the daylights
It
out of that,
did. I
and
remember
it got
that.
nothing.
Nothing.
It got nothing.
Because it wasn't good.
I liked that movie. It was
Yeah.
fun. It was got a lot of critical acclaim, and Sony Pictures was very good about promoting it well, and they did. And they sent out because sometimes you don't just get screeners; you get the booklet. Sometimes you get the screenplay. Sometimes you
Oh
get
yeah, we got for War of the Planet of the Apes this year. Not only did we get like a full
beautiful.
big booklet
Yeah,
with quotes and everything, but we got a special features disc. I was so excited.
yeah. Last year, I'll never forget Jackie, the
Yeah.
Natalie Portman movie where she played Jacqueline Kennedy. We got this beautiful full color picture book.
Mm-hmm.
It was like,
Along with the screenplay and the
yeah,
soundtrack and like
it's like they weren't playing around.
no,
They
no.
wanted us to pick their movie, and it was just fascinating. And I'm sure that I'm sure now we're just a little, probably within the full award show world, we're probably just a small tiny corner of it.
Sure.
But the Academy, I can't imagine the stuff they get
I oh my gosh. The
because
sheer volume of stuff like we get probably a good 60 or more
yeah,
in a full year. This year we actually got less, and I think we got 60 of them this year. But some companies actually sent half of what they usually do because they couldn't figure out what to push because it either wasn't that good of a year or they're still waiting for shoes to drop on the sexual harassment scandals and they don't want to back a losing horse. Um, so they've been like really
Like, should we push
reticent
the
to put
Miramax film?
right.
Ugh.
Let's
How
see.
about
Should the
Woody Allen?
how about
Ugh.
wine? Yeah, let's not push Woody Allen. Let's not push the Weinstein. Let's the Weinstein companies like they'd been sending us screeners for years, and they didn't
They
send
backed
us
off.
anything this year
Yeah, they backed off.
because you know, and Quentin Tarantino's even looking for a new distributor. That's how bad the Weinstein fallout is.
Yeah, yeah.
They started his career. He got them put on the map, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do business with you guys anymore."
If I ever meet him, if I ever meet Quentin Tarantino, and I've had a few drinks, I'm gonna ask him about his hat because I'm told he had a hand in that screenplay.
Really?
I will. Yeah. Early in his career, I'm told that he had a hand in that screenplay.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Yikes.
but
That's not as great a reveal as finding out that Tom Petty used to write songs for Leon Russell.
no.
That's like
But yeah, I mean, as far as the Oscars go, I've watched it every year. I mean, I'm devoted to it. I write my silly little website, which is my life's work, essentially. And
so stop calling it a silly little site. You're the one
my
denigrating it. Come on, man.
I spent 12 years of my life working on that. I shouldn't call it silly, but
You
it's
shouldn't, because it's a
the
really
Oscars.
interesting thing.
The Oscars are all about opinion.
Hmm.
When you get right down to it, when you get to the bottom of the vote, it's an opinion.
Right, and
They
that's
took a
what
vote.
criticism is. You
Yeah, that's what
know, I
criticism
mean,
is. There are films every year
mhm.
that don't get Oscars
Right.
unfairly.
That are
Um,
great. They some don't even get nominations.
but I would rather have something like the Oscars than have to bend to something like the People's Choice Awards.
Ugh, yeah.
People's Choice Awards is the most useless thing I've ever seen in my life because the People's Choice Awards, in my opinion, are the box office.
Right.
That's the box office.
Exactly.
It's not, these little awards that are voted on by the public. It's like,
Hmm.
why? You know, that's silly.
And they don't
Um,
limit the amount of times you can vote,
no,
and like they don't make you sign in to vote, or
it's
you
like
know,
American Idol. You can
right,
vote as many
right,
times as you want.
right. And then you can, people who are big fans of one person or one movie can really flood the vote, and
Yeah.
you know, it's. I mean, but this, I mean, at least majority rules in
Mhm.
that particular instance, unlike others. But that's not the topic of our. Um,
Well, and it's
but
kind of hard. It's kind of hard with movie awards because let's say the Stanley Cup.
right.
Whoever wins wins.
Hmm.
The Super Bowl. Whoever wins wins. This is a little tougher
Because you're
because you're
judging art.
you're judging art.
Like,
In art and commerce, as I've always said, they're squabbling siblings.
mm-hmm,
They're always elbowing each other for space, but they also need each other.
mm-hmm. The thing that I've always been like, I can compare movies. This was better than that. I loved this. This was great, but this one was better. You know, how that I can do. Performances, like
Mm-hmm.
actual people's literal work, is so hard.
Yeah.
Like, when you're trying to put, um, I'll go to 2004 as an example. Jamie Foxx's Ray
Mm-hmm.
versus Leonardo DiCaprio's Howard Hawks.
Yeah.
I
How do you compare the two?
right. Like if Ray had come out a year before or a year after, Leo would have had his first Oscar then.
It's Ray Charles versus Howard Hughes. I mean,
How do you
how do
do
you
that?
pick? Yeah, how
Because
do you do
both
that?
both were extremely nuanced performances. I think um, Jamie Foxx inhabited the character of Ray Charles,
Mhm.
whereas because he got to meet him a couple of times
Yeah.
and see the footage, Howard Hawks doesn't have a lot of footage. So
No, he
that was
didn't.
more of a that was more actor based instead of
Yeah.
imitation based. Uh, I
Well,
still
it's
think
kind of
Jamie
like Lawrence
Foxx.
Fishburne. Kind of like Lawrence Fishburne playing Ike Turner.
Right.
Where do you go with that? And Angela Bassett actually met Tina Turner.
Yeah.
Uh, Lawrence Fishburne was like, there's really nothing I can really learn and then go into her life.
Well, yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
and Ike Turner was still alive at the time.
yeah,
He just
yeah,
died within the last like maybe 5 or 6 years. But
yeah.
like, what would you gain by spending time with a man who, when asked the question, "Do you beat your wife?" his answer is no more than the average man? Where do you go with that?
What do
I
you get
mean,
from that?
the man was so honest in his interviews. You don't need to meet him.
Just watch the interview.
Right.
It's like playing Hitler, and you go to meet Hitler. Not
Right.
that I'm
Yeah.
comparing
Yeah.
Ike Turner
No,
to Hitler,
I'm good. I'm good. I got it.
but it's
I know where to
you
go
don't
with this. I don't need to meet him.
you don't need, yeah. I think I've pretty much got the essence here. And it's strange, and then but how do you compare? It's not fair, but occasionally. But the thing when it gets down to it is this: the Academy Awards again, American tradition.
Hmm.
It's a big, gigantic bauble,
Hmm.
essentially for us,
Hmm.
because we sit there and we watch it. We watch it the same way we watch the Super Bowl. We
Yeah, I
watch it
do.
the same way we watch any other annual thing. It's and I personally think it's much more interesting than something like the Emmys,
Hmm.
because when you watch the Academy Awards, it's a new class every year. When
Right.
you watch the Emmys, how many awards can you give to Modern Family?
Apparently a
How
lot.
many awards can you give? How many awards can you give to this show or that show? It's the same
And then
people every
if
year.
it's like a really heavily awarded show, like something like The Sopranos or Game of Thrones or something, they always win in like their first couple seasons, and then they lay off them, and then they give it to them for their last season. You can tell when they're going to win. You can tell why when Breaking Bad had its last season, you're like, well, that's going to win because they can't give it anymore. They want
Or
to
you
give it
go
one
in
more fling, and then they know that they have to move on to something else.
Or you go in and you watch somebody like Susan Lucci. Susan Lucci loses to the same
That
performance
poor woman.
again. She loses to the same performance again.
Again and
Angela Lansbury
again.
loses for Murder She Wrote again.
Right.
At least when you get to the Oscars, it's a different performance.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different set of it's a different
It
thing.
might be some of the same actors, but it's for a different role.
Right.
And it's
Uh, it's by their very nature that they roll around. I mean,
yeah.
that the same performances roll around, but the Oscars, it's a different class. With the Emmys, it's like it kind of gets a little pathetic. Susan Lucci loses again.
Mm-hmm. And again and again and again and again. Hey,
Again
she
and again and
won,
again.
and she'll never win again.
She'll never win again. It's like Al Pacino,
Right.
nominated what 8, 9 times, wins for Scent of a Woman, never gets nominated again.
Right.
Susan Sarandon wins for Dead Man Walking, never gets nominated again.
Right.
Clint Eastwood was lucky.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, he
Yeah.
was lucky. But well, I think we pretty much answered the question: does Oscar matter?
I think so.
Again.
I
The
think
answer
so.
is yes, it
Yes.
does. So we're gonna kind of close the curtain on our Oscar show this time.
Yeah. No big musical number. No. You can't tell,
No
but
lousy peaches.
right. You can't tell, but right now Jerry's doing an interpretive dance.
You don't want to see that. You really don't. No, you really don't want to see that.
No envelope screw up, but yeah, I think that they still matter, and I think that they're gonna matter. And we're going into what the
90th year.
is it the 90th?
As of, forgive us if you're listening to 10 years from now.
I guess yeah, 1928, 1929 were the ones that got
90th
celebrated.
Annual Academy Awards coming up.
And I think it's going to be an institution for as long as there's movies. Uh, you know, I mean,
I'll keep watching it as long as I can.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that about does it for us here. We're not going to have recommendations because this is a special episode. Uh, so that about does it here on the Pod Bay Doors. Thank you very much for listening. Give us your likes. Give us any of your suggestions that you would like us to cover. If you want to answer "Does Oscar Matter" for yourself in the comments below, please do. We would be happy to hear from you. Uh, Thank you very much for listening. I'm Doug Heller, film critic and film historian for TalkMovieToMe.com. Signing off for myself and for my co-host Jerry Dean Roberts, critic for ArmchairCinema.com, ArmchairOscars.com, and OverThinkingOscars.wordpress.com. You can find all of our episodes at www.thepodbaydoorspodcast.wordpress.com. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and the Pod Bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.
Hollywood Hotel. Good evening. Just a moment, I'll connect you.
Gooey Bally Hooly Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan.
And any shop girl can be a top girl if she pleases the tired businessman.
Hooray for Hollywood! You may be homely in your neighborhood.
To be an actor, see Mr. Factor, you make your kisser look good.
Go out and try your luck, you may be Donald Duck. Hooray for Hollywood! Hooray for Hollywood!
that they lack. Now ain't it funny? They pay them money. Shows what you can do if your horse can act.
Hooray for Hollywood! They hire fellas whose physiques are good. And then they tell them they're the perfect shape men to act like ape men. And they convince them they should. They make them grunt and yell, oh, 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 oh.
And people think they're swell.